Let me know what you think of this line. Bad academies beat bad apprenticeships, but good apprenticeships beat good academies. My justification for that is that in an academy, the risk is mitigated over a bunch of different teachers or a bunch of different tutors, whereas in an apprenticeship, it's very high risk but very high reward if you happen to get a good master or a good teacher. Now, we've all been in work environments where we've been forced to have a mentor, and we have found that mentor to be insufferable, and we realize quite quickly that there is probably quite little that we have to learn from this person, and the experience just becomes quite insufferable, and you're trapped with the inability to grow or advance. That probably is an experience that most of us have had in some capacity. But if you can get a good one, the rewards, I should say, are insurmountable. And this is the hack that I give to people who, if ever you go on a conference, this is what I'd recommend. When it comes to electives, choose on the person, not on the topic. I was at a teacher's one, this was a couple of years ago now, and he ran an all-in, he gave a lecture. This guy gave a lecture, and then it was breakout into seminars, and there were like 30 different seminars that you could choose from. The lecture he gave was to like thousands of teachers. It was such a good lecture. It was basically on the sociology of Gen Z and how to best teach to Gen Z, and basically just going through huge trends that have happened to Gen Z from 2015 onwards. Like he talked about the rise of Rick and Morty and why Rick and Morty resonates with Gen Z, but not with Gen X or often millennials. It was just fascinating to listen to. And so when it came to elective time, we'd all pre-chosen our electives that we'd go to. And I went to one that sounded interesting, but this guy that was running his own seminar had a very small one that didn't sound very exciting. But what had happened was his seminar became overcrowded because a lot of people like me naughtily changed the seminar they were going to go to so they could get to his one, because they realized he just had a wealth of wisdom that could be feasted upon. And I had colleagues that were giving seminars, and I knew just from working with them that it was going to someone who could do a 5 out of 10 seminar versus this guy that could do a 10 out of 10. And so always, if you find that there is an interesting speaker, like, I don't know, if you're at a conference that Kevin Rudd is speaking at, but he's speaking on, the historical development of the Mandarin language in Beijing or whatever, and the other one is just like WWE, still choose the Kevin Rudd one, because the input that he is giving is fascinating, and no curriculum or topic or any way of standardizing education can compensate for the fact that you can have a good tutor. Again, like the ancient model of education was very apprenticeship driven. Now, obviously, resourcing was a huge factor, and countless other arguments as to why it wasn't sustainable at a mass level. Because if you have everyone doing apprenticeships, it's a lot of lost productivity. You want designated tutors, designated teachers to mass provide education. That is a very fair argument. It works on a macro level, but on a micro level, certainly a good apprenticeship is way better than a good academy. And so it's about finding the person who can deliver that value before you. And it doesn't have to be one person. It can just be surrounding yourself with a circle of people who you can feast on their wisdom with. I'll explain my situation as a teacher, right? So I went to the University of New South Wales. If you don't know New South Wales context, there's usually considered two better universities, UNSW and USyd. This isn't me patting myself on the back because I don't think it's true at all. I think it's just a complete lie. But there's two prestigious universities with UTS trailing a little bit behind. Anyway, I did an arts and education degree for 4 years. I had one mad tutor. He was so good, and he basically accounted for 80% of my knowledge on education. But still, even with him being there, none of that education was provided compared to my 4-week apprenticeship I had under a good teacher. So when I was doing my prac, I had an excellent supervising teacher. She basically not only observed my lessons, but identified all the areas that I could get feedback with, but knew which parts were implementable at what time, and knew, like, obviously there was more than 3 things that she could correct after my first lesson, but she was perceptive enough to know that would be an overwhelming amount of feedback to implement for the next time, and so she had a very good ability to do a debrief at the end of the lesson and identify immediately improvable objectives. And by the end of my prac, she was saying, okay, there's this you can do, there's this you can do, and I'm like, oh, okay, why didn't you say that at the start? Like, and she's like, I just need to let you get your feet first. And anyway, she was excellent. Very funnily enough, in a public school that was very Labour leaning, she was the only Liberal person in the HSIE office, and she could beat all the rest of the debates, and that was pretty spectacular to observe as me that's obviously very sympathetic towards Labour. Anyway, she was talented, good at a job, and a good teacher, and I would like to think that I'm an effective teacher, and when I was in schools that I was an effective teacher. I would attribute pretty much the majority of that to her tuition over a 4-week period. I did another prac for 9 weeks a year later, and yeah, the guy's a bit of a dud. and I learnt nothing. But she provided the foundations that enabled me to do what I was able to do in teaching. And often a lot of Mr. M stuff actually comes back to educational principles that she set up in how she tutored me. Anyway, so she taught me far more in 4 weeks than I got from an academy. And so I think it really just illustrates the point of how important it is to get an effective tutor, an effective mentor, or a network of people that can cumulatively play the role of a mentor. The political example of this would be Paul Keating with Jack Lang. Paul Keating, the most successful treasurer in Australia's history, the most revolutionary treasurer in Australia's history, was not an economist, didn't even go to university. But he got tutored by someone who had very comprehensive economic thoughts, Jack Lang. And Paul Keating and Jack Lang, they had their disagreements. Like, Paul Keating as treasurer would not have been carrying on what Jack Lang would have done if he was treasurer, but he had outside tuition. He could think differently to how the rest of Canberra was thinking because he had the tuition of this renegade guy that was very well thought through, but was outside the Labor universe by the time he was getting tutored in the early 1960s. And so to have an access to a network is just so vital. If you right now, and you would consider yourself the most well thought through person on politics in your circle, it is time to expand your circle because there are levels to this. As that is for me as well. I am nowhere near the top of the rung when it comes to levels of thinking about political strategy and political history. So it's finding a network of people who are more well thought through than you on this one, can know all of your talking points that you would raise in a conversation, and can match them with more nuanced thoughts. If you don't have that circle available, then it is time to do so. International leaders do this all the time. So Deng Xiaoping was the most well thought through person in the Chinese Communist Party. Definitely. He was the one that was like, okay, this is a bit cultish. Let's move away from that. We need to be a little bit more pragmatic and raise people's living standards. I've pretty much exhausted all my contacts in the Chinese Communist Party to actually do that well. We're going to need some outside help. He goes to Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. So there's always levels to all of this stuff. And there are constantly people that have extra levels to their game that you can surround yourself with. So how do you get that tuition? How do you get in contact? Well, firstly, it is very hard to get in contact with a sitting member of parliament. They have very demanding schedules and often find it hard to cast aside time just to kind of meet up with you for coffee and to tutor you. That being said, it can actually happen. Like in the Barcaldine Academy, our ACT guys were going to go to a branch meeting, but the branch meeting got cancelled. And so the member of parliament actually went, okay, let's go to the pub. Let's have beers. Shoot, what do you want? I'll answer any question. What do you want to talk about? Firstly, absolute legend. What a kind use of time that guy gave to the branch members there. But they were talking about it in the Barcaldine Academy Discord, which I'm not going to open because I'm not going to leak the group chat. But it was fascinating, right, to hear that just by going to their local branch meeting, they could actually get access to a sitting member of parliament that spoke quite transparently about the challenges of being in office, and they found that really valuable. And so if they could get 10 reps of that in a year, think of the extra levels that they would have to their political game. If you go to your branch meetings, you often come into contact with all sorts of like local, state, federal members that are attending the branch meetings or people who work in close cooperation with those people. If you volunteer for campaigns, that will give you a lot of exposure to people that are either in office or close to people in office that can give you those extra insights as well. But I'm also going to suggest the Barcaldine Academy. Our academy, it's growing in volume, and the people who are joining are quality people. I want to make that really clear. Like, I vet everyone who comes into the Barcaldine Academy. We have people that are being tapped on the shoulder for pre-selection. We have people that are very well established in the trade unions movement. We have people who are getting other people in contact with internships. Like, it's filled with people that are quality contacts in the labor machine, that are well thought through, that aren't just keyboard warriors, and actually have perceptiveness and insight. And these are people in a lot of different areas that would know far more than me on their localized area of politics as well. And so the Barcaldine Academy, it isn't just learning your own party's history. You actually get access to all of these people, and it's like, and whatever level you're at, people are so helpful in there. So we had someone who's like, okay, my first branch meeting, what do I do? What do I expect? We have very senior people that are pretty much on the verge of getting pre-selected going, okay, first branch meeting, we've all been there. This is how you do it. This is what I recommend you do. And it just gave them a playbook of, okay, I feel like I can actually join with confidence and go to this first meeting with confidence. And we, like, wherever you are on the spectrum of attending your first branch meeting to getting pre-selection, we have helpful people in the academy that can guide you through whatever process, and they are happy to give up their time because they have been tutored by other people. And also to see, like, like you see this in any corporation, training is probably the best thing that you can invest in because it has a massive return on investment. If you can effectively train people well, then you can firstly just like palm off a lot of the job, palm off a lot of your previous job description. But B, it keeps the corporate consciousness going, and it gives you access to an unlimited workforce theoretically. And so people are very happy to give up their time if you are teachable and if you're willing to learn. You can, do a long shot, send them a DM on Insta or letter to Parliament, again, just to see if you can get some sort of meet up with them. It's a long shot, it probably won't work, but hey, worth a shot. But then once you find your person, once you find your network of people that have extra levels to their game when compared to you, feast on that wisdom. Again, when it comes to being like taught or being teachable, in a lot of contexts, one of the greatest skills that you can have is to find people who will teach you well and then to just absorb everything they have and to be able to discern between who is worth listening to and who isn't worth listening to. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with being, politely, not rudely, dismissive of people that you can quite quickly work out don't have much to be able to teach you. But then certainly once you find someone who can and someone who has immense value to you, I'm not even saying just find someone you agree with. Often it's people who you don't agree with, which brings me on to my next point. If you find someone who has a sharper way of analysis than you do and has an ability to absorb or knowledge across multiple factors that you don't yet have, feast on it and absorb it. And then this last point I think is really important. If John Howard sent me a message, was like, look, I know you're Labor, but do you want to meet up weekly and we can chat political strategy? I would take that deal in a heartbeat. I would love to have a weekly coffee catch up with John Howard and pick his brain. Just because your political opponents work within a different machine does not mean they don't have very valuable political wisdom. And often a lot of it translates across party lines. Like obviously, like when we think of unionized workforce versus non-unionized workforce, the actual nature of the policy will be very different. But the broader political strategy of actually implementing a vision and managing a consensus or coalition of people together translates across party lines very easily. And I think it can be really valuable for sharpening your particular insight and going, I've never thought of it that way before. That is very helpful. I mean, John Howard, I think, has excellent political wisdom. And he accurately diagnosed what was going to go wrong for the Liberals at the last election. He was like, you haven't given enough time to have people marinate in your policies. I think the analogy he used was you didn't fatten the calf before market day. And honestly, if you can find someone in the Liberal Party, it only really would be the Liberal Party because One Nation and Greens are much more rabble-rousing than they are have experience in governance. But if you can find like people from the Liberal Party that have genuine valuable wisdom, and I would absolutely endorse meeting up, getting their perspective, and being teachable and learning from the wisdom they have to offer. But I think if you want to get a starting point, you're like, I don't have any contacts, I don't have any networks, and I want to level up my political understanding and my political knowledge, join the Barcaldine Academy. Our network and our support network of people, same word twice, support group in the Barcaldine Academy is really helpful in getting you started. And even if you are quite advanced along the spectrum, there are people that are, on the verge of pre-selection and being tapped on the shoulder for pre-selection that are also being really helpful and giving advice to people in a not domineering or overly aggressive way, just in a very gentle and kind way. Hi there. I'm Cam and I have a YouTube channel with over 5 million views on Australian political history. And at the end of 2025, I built a program that, as we speak, is helping people get chosen to be candidates for the Labor Party. Let me tell you how. For starters, it covers the entire Labor history of the major states. Each state has like 2 books available on their Labor history, but thankfully I could get my hands on them and make easy to digest modules so that my students have the ultimate perspective of the party they're in and why certain policies worked and others just didn't. You can quiz yourself at any point to check your understanding. But the Barcaldine Academy is much more than just a lecture hall. It's a classroom with legends across all the states that are helping people get connected and meet other people in the Labor machine. Others are giving each other feedback on their motions, and some are even helping others get beers with sitting politicians. So couple a well-connected person with someone who has actual perspective on the history of their party and the challenges that they faced, and you get this. Since 1909, our parties have been divided over one battle line. The party that thinks that unions should have a role in making decisions, and a coalition of others who think that the unions simply don't belong at the governing table. If you want to grow in influence so that you can shape that very union party, I
think that I might be able to help. Click this link right here to apply to join the Barcaldine Academy. I'll get back to you pretty quickly.